Insecurity in relationships is one of, if not the biggest indicators of how a relationship will turn out. Whether or not a person feels safe and secure in their romantic or personal relationships will inform a lot about their behavior. And if they don't trust their partner, that'll inevitably lead to toxicity in their relationship. Let's say, as an example, you get into a relationship with someone who had previously been cheated on. In the early stages of the relationship, they tell you that they are extremely sensitive when it comes to the topic of infidelity, because the last person they had been with cheated on them for years. They tell you that you cheating is an out-and-out deal breaker, and that while they trust you, they also trusted their past partner, so they can't trust their judgment. You understand, and you assure them that even though they made their issues seem like they could be deal breakers, you like them enough to want to work through this with them. You tell them all the right things, and assure them if anything comes up, you will be there, ready and willing to work things out with them. As your relationship progresses though, things change. It's a slow build at first, starting with little issues that pop up every couple of weeks or months, but they become more and more frequent as time goes on. Their insecurity and past issues dealing with infidelity lead them to believing that whenever you talk to the opposite sex, even family members or coworkers, you're going to cheat with them. They go through your phone whenever you leave the room, and have hacked your social media various times, as well as accusing you of cheating in public, leading to massive arguments in front of strangers. As much as you have tried to assure them that you haven't cheated, when they're upset, they refuse to listen, and the added stress has led to you doing things that aren't healthy. You no longer feel comfortable leaving your phone around them, because should you get an email or text from your mom, they believe that you've changed the name of the person in your phone to be Mom, to throw them off the scent. While you were comfortable with them having your phone passcode in the beginning, you now change it every couple of days to make sure they aren't able to get in. And you have begun telling them lies about where you're going during the day, because if they knew you saw certain people, including people in your family, they would accuse you of cheating, and it would lead to another argument. Soon enough, you can't fully remember the last time your partner and you went a week without fighting, and them accusing you of cheating on them. Your family and friends see what has happened, and they encourage you to break up with them. They tell you that you've become a shell of yourself, you're paranoid, having to lie to your significant other just to see them, and it's clear that the relationship has run its course. When you see their family, it's clear they believe the same thing and want the relationship to end. But you swore that you would be there for them, that you two would work through this, and whenever you get close to breaking up and away, they remind you of when you first talked about this, and you assured them that you would be there for them. You don't like this. You don't want to lie to your partner, but their insecurity about potential infidelity has made the relationship feel like a prison. You want to assure them that they're safe with you, but nothing seems to work, and they are so willing to lash out at you with accusations of malice that you feel like you're stuck. That level of insecurity isn't uncommon in the modern dating world, and it has led to many relationships going south. However, in today's case, we will be discussing a person who was so insecure in their relationship that they framed their husband's ex-wife for heinous crimes. Welcome back to another episode of Dreading, or if this is your first time here, welcome. Today we're going to be covering the case of Michelle Hadley, and how far someone would go to destroy someone else's life. This case came recommended to us from one of our patrons, and after delving into this case and the related documents, it's clear to see why. When Michelle Hadley and Ian Diaz broke up in August of 2015, it had not been amicable. Michelle and Ian had met and begun dating in the later part of 2013, when she was 26, working as a marketing executive for an insurance agency. Ian was 10 years older than her and worked as a U.S. Marshal, but after immediately connecting over a dating app, the two were nearly inseparable. Ian declared his love for Michelle on their second date and went further to purchase her an annual pass to Disneyland, with the hopes that they would go as often as possible. At first, the relationship seemed too good to be true. Ian routinely showed her off to his peers, boasting about how wonderful she was, and how she was the best thing to ever happen to him. She had never been in a relationship where her partner was so vocally proud of her, and she greatly enjoyed whenever he would show her off. However, as time went on, the relationship dynamics began to shift. Ian's praise began to lessen. He told Michelle this was because she wasn't taking care of herself the way he liked. When they had met, he said, she put more effort in, and he preferred that she keep that up. He began to control what she wore, going as far to pressure her into getting a navel piercing, how much she drank, and would routinely track her whenever she went out. He would also give her gifts, like iPhones, laptops, and tablets, all with the express purpose of tracking her. He would set these electronics up for her, as she stated she didn't know how to do it herself, and would routinely record her on these devices without her knowing. Ian would also control how much she slept, waking her up multiple times throughout the night to make her watch a show with him, or to talk to him about whatever. Michelle's health would deteriorate over the first year with him, but she still believed he was an amazing boyfriend. He convinced her that it was her job, not him, that was causing her so much stress, and he told her that she would be much happier if she were to quit and take a position at Disneyland. As time wore on, Ian's behavior continued to worsen. He controlled nearly every aspect of Michelle's life, forcing her to drink nightly with him, dress provocatively at all times, and even going so far as to making appointments for her. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. According to Michelle, Ian also had a very specific fantasy that he was interested in her doing for him. Oh no, he's gonna get fucking weird. According to the legal documents surrounding the case, Ian was interested in cuckolding, which according to the Cambridge Dictionary is when a man enjoys knowing that his wife has had a sexual relationship with another man. He repeatedly begged for Michelle to sleep with other people and would send her pictures of his genitals and porn throughout the day, despite knowing she was at work. If she had to travel for her job, he would call her, pleading with her to find a stranger and record herself having sex with them for him, and she repeatedly told him no. She told him to stop, and at one point stated that if he didn't stop asking her to do this, she would end the relationship, but Ian refused, instead choosing to wait until Michelle was struck with a debilitating fever to drug her with cold medicine, force her to take shots of whiskey, then place an ad on Craigslist for a man to come over to have sex with her. Ian recorded the encounter secretly, and then would go on to hold the video of her sexual assault over her head for years to come. After the assault, Michelle felt isolated. She had turned into someone she didn't know to appease her boyfriend, and she wanted to try and get some of her independence back. In August of 2014, she enrolled in the MBA program at Chapman University and began to attend classes 2 nights a week. Ian viewed this decision with ire and would routinely try to attend classes with her so that she wouldn't be able to do things without him. When Michelle told him that wasn't allowed, he would start arguments with her on the nights when her classes were scheduled, telling her that the only way he would let the argument end was if they were to spend the rest of the night at Disneyland together. When Michelle would try to say no, he would accuse her of not caring about him, using him, cheating, and more. Nearly always, she would be forced to miss class. In June of 2015, Ian would tell Michelle that they were going to buy their first place together. Ian had proposed to Michelle, and they had tentatively set a wedding date for February 2016. To prepare for their life together, he had found a condominium mere blocks away from Disneyland and thought it was the perfect place to start the next phase of their life together. Michelle paid the down payment on the home, totaling up to over $14,000, and the two obtained a mortgage of nearly $500,000 to pay for the domicile. But things quickly went from bad to worse. Michelle hadn't liked their relationship dynamic before the move and wanted to be more independent. However, after they moved in together, their relationship once again changed for the worse. Ian began to isolate Michelle even more, subjecting her to angry rants for hours on end. When she would try to leave, or give Ian some space, he would follow her, and would talk about the 4 firearms that he had in his possession, not so subtly threatening her. On one occasion, when they got into an argument on the way home from a work event, Ian stopped his car in the middle of a busy freeway and demanded she exit the vehicle for disrespecting him. He had not pulled to the side, and leaving would immediately result in her being struck, but he stayed stopped for a significant amount of time, trying to force her out of the car. Despite fearing for her safety, Michelle wanted to try and work on the relationship as much as she could. She still held on to hope that Ian was the same guy she had fallen in love with, and if he just worked on himself a bit more, they could fix their issues. She convinced him to go to couples counseling with her, with the hopes that they could open up their communication with an unbiased third party, but that too went horribly. The pair only made it through one full session of counseling, which ended when Michelle tried to discuss the sexual assault. According to court filings, after the session, Ian drove Michelle haphazardly around the Anaheim area for hours, refusing to let her out of the vehicle and threatening to crash the car and kill her. Finally, in August of 2015, Michelle packed up as much as she could and left the shared condo. Ian retaliated by destroying all of her property that was left within the home, as well as canceling her car insurance and threatening to send some of his law enforcement friends to her home, work, and school to, quote, check up on her, unquote. She reported his behavior to security at her work and school, repeatedly telling authorities that she feared for any further retaliation. Worse still, the mortgage they had taken out was in her name, and he hadn't taken it over. The exes were forced to continue to communicate over the condo, but each conversation was aggressive and vitriolic. In September of 2015, Ian filed for a protective order against Michelle, submitting multiple emails to the court as evidence against her. In the court documents, he wrote, "I work as a U.S. Marshal, and after showing my supervisor the threatening emails, he recommended that I seek a domestic violence restraining order. She has told me that I must comply with her demands or be prepared for God's vengeance, and referred to me as Satan and the Antichrist. Because of her emotional instability, history of fits of rage, and self-medication with alcohol, I fear for my safety." The protective order was eventually dismissed, but Michelle was now on law enforcement's radar. It was only after the former couple hired property lawyers to mediate their dispute that the issue was resolved. On November 24, 2015, Ian agreed to an arm's-length settlement and mutual release agreement in which he would pay Michelle $3,000 in exchange for a quitclaim deed for the property and his assumption of the mortgage loan by June of the next year, meaning that he would pay her $3,000 and have the property to himself. However, despite this agreement, Ian made no attempt to take over the loan. Michelle had gotten herself away from Ian, she started a new job, gotten herself a new apartment, and was slowly on her way to finding herself, but her problems had just begun. Just 4 months after Michelle left him, Ian was already in another relationship, this time with a woman named Angela Connell. Like he had with Michelle before him, he immediately declared his love for Angela and told her that she was the best thing that had ever happened to him. Once more, she was being shown off on social media and in person to all his friends and family, and after just 1 month, the two were married. According to people who knew the couple, Angela stated that she was pregnant when the two were married, but shortly after the wedding, Angela would testify that Michelle would force her way into her and Ian's life. According to the couple, in May of 2016, they began receiving threatening emails from Michelle. The following are examples that were included in their court case. "I hope you are scared to death tomorrow. Be prepared, don't sleep. We'll steal your child and we will watch as it dies. You are a piece of shit and I hope to God you burn for what you have done to us. You deserve nothing but a life of lonely torture. I have ways to hurt you. There is no place you will be safe anymore. You might be beautiful, you might be the one he married, but you are still a sinner and must be punished. I will make sure you are reminded of your place by force. I know you are leaving work. I watch as you walk. Let's play a game." These emails included photos of gore with women who had been horrifically beaten and abused, some including videos of said abuse, which includes videos of simulated rape. These emails would come in multiple times a day and include details that only someone who was watching her would know. Angela stated that she tried to block the emails to stop the online attacks, but whenever she did, a new one, nearly identical to the older one, would pop up and continue the onslaught. At the same time, someone seemingly went on Craigslist and posted pretending to be Angela. This person posted that they were a woman whose ultimate fantasy was to be raped. They asked for men to come to the address and attack her when she went out to walk her dog. "If you are free tonight, come find me, force me into my house, and take me down." The post emphasized that she would fight back, that she would pretend she didn't want to, but that she really did. The poster responded to seemingly multiple people interested in attacking Angela, encouraging them to come to her home. And on June 24, 2016, Angela would place a 911 call to state that she had been ambushed in her garage by one of these men. When the police arrived, Angela and Ian had a plethora of evidence against Michelle. They provided the emails that she had sent over the past couple of weeks, as well as the posts online, and allowed the police to access their security camera footage, which they alleged showed Michelle stalking the two. While this was going on, Michelle's life was in a state of flux. On May 24th, she had received a strange message on her LinkedIn account, seemingly from a man named Jason Rayburn. Jason was an ex-boyfriend of Angela, and he repeatedly messaged her, telling her that he knew Ian was dangerous and she needed to talk to his new wife and save her. The following are two examples of the messages as included in the court documents. "I know who Ian Diaz is. His wife, Angela. You need to tell her who he really is and save her from a life that you went through. You need to contact Angela. Ian is getting away with more abuse and if proven in court, could end him." Michelle knew that these messages weren't real and wanted nothing to do with Ian, so she ignored them entirely. Similarly, she ignored notifications that her email was being used as a forwarding security email for various newly made Gmail accounts, but felt that it had likely something to do with her ex. Though she had moved on with her life and was beginning to work through some of the trauma the relationship had left her with, she still felt unsafe. Her parents encouraged her to move back home with them for a short while, and due to stress, she resigned from her job, gave up her lease, and dropped out of school. On June 1st, Michelle received an email informing her that Angela Diaz was taking a restraining order out on her. Michelle was perplexed by this news, as she had never so much as spoken to Angela, and thought that at most, this was some tactic by Ian to hurt her. She didn't know what to expect, but figured that because she hadn't spoken to Ian in months, and had never spoken to Angela, the case would quickly be dismissed. On June 6th, while Michelle was at her parents' home, police surrounded her home and hand-delivered a temporary restraining order, ordering her to stay away from Angela. Michelle was confused and asked the officer who handed her the order what she had done, but she wasn't given any clarification. Notably, the officer was someone who Michelle knew to be a friend of Ian's. That same day, she received an email from the email address ianrdiaz@outlook.com. It urged her to come over to the property, citing issues that they needed to work out before he could put the mortgage in his name. Michelle immediately viewed this as a trap, given the restraining order, and ignored the email outright. Later on, Michelle received a call from Detective William Seglitz, who asked her about various email addresses that appeared to be hers. She directly stated that she didn't own or use any other emails other than her professional one, and stated she felt like she was being set up by her ex. She asked the detective if he had looked into the IP addresses, because she was confident that they would lead back to her ex, but he stated that he hadn't, and that a different detective would be investigating that. Michelle felt as if he ignored her, and immediately got the sense that she wasn't being believed. In their relationship, Ian had often threatened her with his friends and law enforcement, stating that he was a well-connected guy who could get people to look the other way. Now she feared that he was right. Fearing that she was going to be railroaded in court and wanting to make sure she had told the police her side of the story, Michelle began contacting the police on a nearly daily basis. She wanted to talk to the detective in charge of the case and make sure he was able to look at the IP address and go through her electronics to prove she had no part in any harassment. At the same time, she sent 2 emails to Microsoft, reporting any emails that were being linked to her professional account. She wanted it on the record that she was not the one making these emails, and that they were someone else who was conspiring against her. On June 15th, Michelle called the Ontario Police Department with the hopes that they could help her document what was happening, but they referred her to the FBI. That same day, she filled out an IC3 form with the FBI, writing, quote, "While I don't know who exactly is doing this, I have a reason to believe that my ex-fiancé, Ian Diaz, also a deputy U.S. Marshal, is using gmail.com, outlook.com, and hotmail.com to impersonate me and send threatening emails to his current wife to scare me into letting him keep the property we co-own. I would like IP address research conducted to identify where the emails are coming from, and if possible, who is creating them. mshadley214@hotmail.com, mshadley214@hotmails.com, Mrs. Diaz Forever at Outlook.com, Lilith is Truth at Outlook.com, Ian R. Diaz at Outlook.com, Michelle Hadley Diaz 13 at gmail.com, First and Only 1113 at gmail.com. When she arrived to court on June 17th, she brought her property lawyer and her father for support, unsure of what she was walking into. However, Angela came armed with the harassing emails along with a list of email addresses that were impersonating Michelle. The majority of these emails were variations of the name Michelle Diaz, implying that she was obsessed with Ian and was attacking Angela with the hopes of getting back together with him. Michelle tried to argue against the emails being her, and provided as much evidence as she could that she was reporting the emails to Microsoft and was not the person behind them, but her statements fell on deaf ears. Later that day, Michelle received an email that her normal email account had posted an ad on Craigslist titled Gang Rape Fantasy. She immediately emailed abuse@craigslist.org to inform them that she had not posted the ad and wanted it taken down, but the ad, of course, stayed up. 3 days later, Michelle would be arrested in front of her parents' home. The officers told her that Angela had been attacked in her garage by a young man who was responding to the ad that was placed on Craigslist. He stated that Angela had been badly injured, which was not true, and that they had evidence that she was the one who had put the ad up. Michelle showed the officers the emails she had sent to Craigslist, stating that she hadn't put the ad up and wanted it taken down. She also showed them the emails that she had received, seemingly from Ian, telling her to come over to the home, which she didn't do, but they responded that the email was likely from her and was proof that she had violated the restraining order. She gave them access to her phone and computer, knowing that it would prove that she hadn't taken part in any harassment, and when she was questioned as to why she didn't show this evidence in court or to law enforcement, she informed them that she tried to call the lead detective for the past week and hadn't heard back. One of the arresting officers was the lead detective, and he stated that she had never even called, only to make a joke out of it when she showed him proof that she had. Michelle was arrested that night and charged with 5 felonies and 1 misdemeanor, including stalking, stalking with TRO, rape by force, fear, criminal threats with intent to terrorize, assault with intent to rape and commission of a burglary, and contempt of court for violating an order of protection. Michelle was released on bail the next morning, and once more went back to live with her parents. Her phone and laptop were left at the precinct, and she had no way of getting back online. She was locked out of her email because the police had her phone, and she had 2-step authorization on, but the morning she was let out of prison, Angela stated she started receiving emails once more. On July 14th, Michelle was arrested by the same detectives that had taken her into custody the first time, and her bail was set at $1 million, making it so she wouldn't be able to get out. She faced 33 charges, all of which would be compounded because they took place when she was out on bail. She was also facing life in prison. Michelle stayed in prison for 2.5 months, where she was labeled a Romeo by the prison, meaning she was in there for a sex crime. Her time in prison was mired with disrespect, abuse, and assault. But on October 6th, she was released on the condition that she take part in a sting operation involving the case. On October 10th, she was released on her own recognizance and forced to wear an ankle monitor in her home. It wouldn't be for another 2 months that she would be fully exonerated, and some version of the truth would come out. The following is from the press conference that took place January 9th, 2017.
Good morning, and thank you all for coming. It's often said that true life is stranger than fiction. The facts of this case make that statement spot on. When a person who's committed a crime gets arrested and charged, that's a bad day. But when someone who's innocent gets arrested and charged with a crime, that's not just a bad day, it's a nightmare. This is a tale of a woman who faced such a nightmare. But with the help of her attorney and law enforcement who continued to seek the truth, she'll be able to be exonerated. I'm here to announce the filing of a felony complaint against Angela Marie Diaz by the Orange County District Attorney's Office. The charges include numerous felony charges, including 2 counts of kidnapping, 2 counts of false imprisonment, perjury, 2 counts of forgery, 2 counts of possession of a forged instrument, grand theft, 1 misdemeanor count of filing a false report with an agency, and 21 misdemeanor counts of filing false police reports. As important as the filing of charges against Ms. Diaz is, the dismissal of the previous complaint and the exoneration of Michelle Suzanne Hadley is every bit as important. The complaint number 16NF2004 previously charged Ms. Hadley with several felony counts that carried a maximum sentence of life in prison. This is a complex and detailed case, and I won't be able to share all of the details now. I wanted to make sure, however, that Ms. Hadley is cleared in every possible way, in the courtroom and in the court of public opinion. It needs to be made clear in the media and in cyberspace. Ms. Hadley is an innocent victim of a diabolical scheme. These 2 women, Michelle Hadley and Angela Diaz, are connected through a common man. For the time being, we're going to identify that man as John Doe. Michelle Hadley is the former fiancée of John Doe. Angela Diaz is John Doe's soon-to-be ex-wife. Here are some relevant dates in this unusual tale, this unusual timeline. In 2013, Ms. Hadley and John Doe started dating after meeting online. After a whirlwind romance, they eventually purchased a condominium together in Anaheim. To part ways, in August of 2015, Ms. Hadley moved out of the residence. In September of 2015, Ms. Hadley and John Doe argued over email and text messages about the status of their relationship and financial issues surrounding their condo. Some of Ms. Hadley's emails contained accusations toward Doe, descriptions of events in their relationship, and included language with religious overtones. Ms. Hadley and John Doe then ended contact with each other in the fall of 2015. John Doe met Angela Diaz in January of 2016 on the same dating website where he met Ms. Hadley. They married at the end of February 2016, and Angela moved into the condo with John Doe. the same one that had been purchased by Ms. Hadley and John Doe. In mid-May of 2016, Diaz claimed she was pregnant with twins. On June 1st, 2016, Diaz is accused of reporting to the Anaheim Police Department that Ms. Hadley sent her threatening messages over the email and included accusations toward Doe that contained language very similar to Ms. Hadley's September 2015 emails that she had sent to John Doe. And Diaz provided copies of these emails to Anaheim PD. Throughout the month of June, Diaz is accused of providing Anaheim PD officers with copies of emails showing Ms. Hadley continually threatening to have Diaz raped. Diaz is accused of adding links to graphic images and photographs of dead human beings, decapitated bodies, and aborted fetuses. Diaz is also accused of reporting and providing documents to Anaheim PD supporting her claim that Ms. Hadley was impersonating her and asking men to come over to the condo to engage in violent rape, fantasy, sexual encounters, and providing photographs of Diaz and her address. Starting on June 13, 2016, Diaz is accused of reporting to Anaheim PD officers that men arriving at her residence, eager to engage, that men were arriving at her residence, eager to engage in rape, fantasy, sexual encounters with her. Her story was bolstered by the fact that law enforcement contacted and intercepted some of these men near Diaz's residence, who admitted to responding to the Craigslist ad and believed they were being invited to engage in a consensual encounter with Diaz. On June 24, 2016, Diaz is accused of calling 911 and reporting that a man attempted to rape her in her condo's garage. She's accused of crying and meeting the police with her shirt ripped, with visible redness on her neck and on her breast area. She's accused of claiming to Anaheim PD that a man attempted to rape her. Ms. Hadley was arrested later on the evening of June 24th and bailed out the next morning on June 25th on $100,000 bail. It should be noted that pursuant to Marcy's Law, Diaz was notified by law enforcement when Ms. Hadley was taken into custody and when she bailed out. Diaz is accused of claiming that while Ms. Hadley was in custody, the threatening emails and rape fantasy solicitations stopped, but that after Ms. Hadley bailed out, the threats and solicitations began again, almost immediately. Diaz is accused of sending emails containing language that made them appear to have been written by Ms. Hadley. From June 25th to July 13, 2016, Diaz's reporting to the Anaheim PD continued. Diaz is accused of reporting to Anaheim PD that in some of these emails, Ms. Hadley requested Diaz contact her. These email requests included Ms. Hadley's parents' phone number, as well as an email address that Ms. Hadley had told police was, in fact, her email address. Also including emails that appeared to have originated from Ms. Hadley's verified email addresses. On July 13, 2016, Diaz called 911. When officers arrived, they found a 17-year-old boy outside who admitted to responding to the solicitation that he believed was an advertisement. He believed that the advertisement was real. Due to the seriousness of the threats, the alleged attack on Diaz in her garage, the escalation in both the frequency and nature of the threats, and yet another man arriving at Diaz's residence to engage in a rape fantasy encounter, law enforcement believed a serious threat to public safety existed. Based on the fact that the available evidence pointed only to Ms. Hadley, an arrest warrant was issued and charges were filed against her. On July 14, 2016, the court issued an arrest warrant and Ms. Hadley was charged in a felony complaint with stalking with a restraining order, stalking, criminal threats, attempted rape, assault with intent to commit rape, assault with intent to commit rape during a residential burglary, violating a protective order, and a crime bail crime enhancement. These charges carried a maximum sentence of life in prison, and she was held on $1 million bail. At the time of Ms. Hadley's arrest, all of the available evidence pointed toward her guilt, including, but not limited to, the emails, email addresses, and rape fantasy solicitations used specific and relevant language and religious tones which were nearly identical to emails that we know were sent by Ms. Hadley to John Doe in September of 2015 and signed by Ms. Hadley. Real men showed up in response to the Craigslist ads. Diaz reported she was attacked in her garage and appeared to have physical evidence corroborating her claims. When Ms. Hadley was taken into custody on June 24, 2016, the email traffic ceased. And it began soon after she was released and when she bailed out of custody. Some of the emails contained Ms. Hadley's verified email address, her parents' home and business phone numbers, and other personal facts. Ms. Hadley maintained her innocence, and she communicated to third parties that she thought she was being set up. Anaheim PD investigators attempted to serve emergency search warrants in order to determine the Internet Protocol, or IP addresses, for the emails to find the locations from which the emails were being sent. But the use of virtual private networks, or VPNs, and third-party proxy servers masked the IP addresses and the originating locations of the messages. In all of these cases, Diaz now stands accused of pretending to be Ms. Hadley and sending the emails and rape fantasy solicitations to herself in order to frame Ms. Hadley. I want to give kudos to the Anaheim Police Department, in particular Detective Michael Kuna, who worked tirelessly and devoted hundreds of hours to uncovering the truth.
There are portions of what he said that are true, but more significant portions that are not, that being that all the evidence in the case had been carefully crafted to make Hadley look guilty, and that there was absolutely no evidence that pointed to the case being fraudulent. According to legal records involving this case, the fake emails were not well produced and made to look real. In fact, a lot of them had various errors strewn throughout. On one occasion, one of the emails that was used as evidence of her guilt had 2 addresses in the sent column and none in the recipient column. On other occasions, they could switch the sender and the recipient, making it appear as if Ian and Angela were harassing Michelle. Many of the emails didn't even bother to mask the IP address, and clearly showed they were being sent from the fucking Diaz home. Good lord. Moreover, when Angela had been attacked in the garage of their parking structure, no evidence of the attack was ever brought forward. Security footage of the structure shows no one going after Angela, and photos taken after her attack showed no wounds or bruising. The evidence was damning, but not against Michelle. The evidence was clearly and obviously doctored, and didn't hold up to any criticism, but all the red flags were somehow overlooked by every fucking law enforcement official who was involved in the case. Moreover, the narrative from January 2017 seemed to be that whatever happened in this occurrence, more or less, was a spat between 2 women over a man, and that Ian was in no way involved. But that would soon change. While my brother and I were researching this story, we were going through all the reports chronologically. We noticed something odd. Initially, the motive for this crime was implied to be simple petty insecurity and jealousy on Angela's part. She was the person behind the scheme. She had duped Ian into marriage by faking a pregnancy, and she had lied about having cancer, as well as going so far as to impersonate his other ex-girlfriends to ensure he was dedicated to her and her alone. Articles portrayed her as being a crazy girlfriend, obsessed with Ian, so much so that she faked a sexual assault on herself. Notably, Ian himself was more than happy to co-sign this version of events, even going so far as to ask for his identity to be kept private in the reporting around this case, as he had no idea what his wife had been up to. In various news reports, he was said to be extremely heartbroken and remorseful for believing his wife, and stated that the lengths she had gone to fabricate her story made it impossible for him not to believe her at the time. In other reports at this time, Ian, known only as John Doe, was viewed as a hapless, overly trusting guy who didn't know any better. His only fault was becoming involved with a woman who would go to extremes to make sure he stayed with her. However, as the investigation into what happened continued, that changed. In 2021, Ian Diaz was indicted for his part in the scheme to frame Michelle, and it was proven that he and his wife had planned to frame Michelle all over their shared condo. Ian had agreed to take over the mortgage payments, but after Ian married Angela, they began scheming about how to get Michelle out of the picture. They didn't want her dead, because that would be too dramatic of an escalation, but they wanted to make sure that she looked crazy in court. That way the judge would side with Ian. It's also clear that he wanted to destroy her life. Because of Ian's intimate knowledge of Michelle, he was able to mimic her online activity fairly easily. He had seen screen names and social media handles she had used throughout her life, and was able to replicate them with ease, making it appear as though they were getting threatening and abusive messages sent to them non-stop. He went further to use his status as a U.S. Marshal to work with the Anaheim Police Department on the case and to gain favor with the officers. On various occasions, when he reported what Michelle was allegedly doing to him, he would arrive in his marshal's uniform and would routinely ask the investigating officers for favors and advice, and throughout the investigation would text them in a friendly manner. After the pair had posted the fake rape fantasy ad on Craigslist and had faked a failed sexual assault, Ian took one of the responding officers aside and stated that Michelle, quote, needs to be in fucking handcuffs and in a padded room, then went further to say that even he, as a U.S. Marshal, had never seen anything like this. When they repeated their fake rape ad scheme, he told a different officer, quote, at what point does this girl get arrested for sending this shit and hiring guys off of Craigslist to rape Angela, unquote. Angela and Ian had gotten what they wanted. Michelle was incarcerated and the condo was ultimately theirs, but they were shocked to learn that the investigation didn't simply end. Michelle fought against the false allegations, begging the police to look at her laptop, phone, and all the computers that she had access to show that she had no part in the scheme. She provided them alibis from when certain communication was sent, showing that she couldn't have sent the emails, texts, and other forms of harassment as she had been at work, out of town, or in people's company. None of her friends and family had ever seen her write any of the alleged emails, and no one believed she held enough malice to follow through with any of the accusations. As the investigation continued, they searched through all of Michelle's electronic devices and found that, like she had said prior, she had never visited Craigslist. She didn't even have access to any of the emails that were allegedly coming from her, and there was no evidence of her attacking Angela or Ian. This left a multitude of questions. If Michelle was the person who was harassing Angela and Ian, how had she been smart enough to turn on a VPN, but not smart enough not to sign the emails with her name? Why did she continue to email them from emails associated with her name and work if she wanted to do this anonymously? And how was it? It was all done with no fucking evidence linking back to her. What the fuck? I wonder why did they do this? Just like the moon landing, we'll never really know. It's just so complicated. As time went on, it became clear that Angela and Ian's story didn't make sense. On August 2nd, 2016, Ian changed his personal cell phone number as he realized one of the accounts they had opened under Michelle's name was done with that number. The following day, he went further to delete one of his many fucking email accounts for the same goddamn reason. But the pressure continued to mount. At some point, Ian was made aware that the majority of the emails that had been sent to them couldn't have come from Michelle, given the fact that she couldn't access her email at the time. She hadn't been able to get into any of her accounts, and she didn't have access to any electronics after she'd been arrested. So they would have to account for the fact that all of the emails that had come in after her initial arrest were fraudulent. Fucking come on! Are you fucking kidding me? Ian knew that eventually the truth was going to come out. Their scheme to ruin Michelle's life was about to be revealed, and he decided that it would be in his best interest to throw his wife under the bus, while asking for some form of privacy. On September 24th, 2016, Ian spoke to one of the detectives on the case and appeared distraught. He told the officers that he believed that it was his wife, not Michelle, who had sent the months of harassment their way, and claimed that he no longer believed she had ever been sexually assaulted, and instead lied about the entire ordeal. He stated that he was confused, hurt, and that he didn't know where to go from there. When asked what happened that made him believe his wife had been behind the framing, Ian explained that the previous month he had received an email from an account that he had opened for himself in July. He knew Michelle was in prison at that time and wouldn't be able to gain access to said account. However, he realized that he had accessed that email on his work phone, which his wife had access to as well. Ian informed police that he now believed that his wife, not his ex, was the one who had set the entire ordeal up, and that she did so to isolate him out of jealousy. He doubled down on his version of events on September 30th, when he spoke to the police in person. This would mean that when Michelle was released from prison, it wasn't due to the incredible work from the detectives, as stated by the Anaheim Police Department, but because Ian realized they were about to get caught and wanted to blame the ordeal on his wife. Though he had been more than happy to talk to the press and officers about Michelle, he claimed that the entire ordeal was just too much for him, and he made the direct request to have his name removed from any reporting on the story. And the Anaheim Police Department, in their press conference about the case, respected his wishes, calling him a John Doe throughout. On October 17, 2017, Angela pleaded guilty to 10 felony charges, including false imprisonment and perjury. Hadley had faced a maximum sentence of life in prison for crimes the Diazes accused her of. Angela struck a deal with prosecutors and was given 5 years in prison. It wouldn't be until 2021, nearly 5 years after the whole ordeal, that Ian would be indicted for his part in the scheme. It would be another 2 years for him to be found guilty and sentenced to 10 years and 1 month in prison. Michelle went on to sue the city of Anaheim and nearly everyone involved in this case who overlooked the evidence she presented and placed her in prison for 2.5 months. The legal documentation in regards to that lawsuit are incredibly thorough, and if you're interested in reading them, I will leave them linked below. Truly, this only happened because of incompetence on the investigator's part, and malice, of course, from Ian and Angela.